Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the Equine Photo School podcast. I'm your host, Oli Moss, and today we're gonna dive into making it fun, just like the title says. So, whatever that means to you is gonna be different than what it means to me, and it means to somebody else, and that's totally okay. That's what it's all about, right? So this is you and about you and your experience in this life, in this world. Not to get too, heady about it, but it's about making this whole process of photography and life and business and the whole thing, making it just a little bit or hopefully a lot more enjoyable for you. So it's not just grunt work. It's not just grinding it out day after day. I have to do this. I need to do that. Here's my to-do list. And how do I plow through all these tasks the most efficient way possible? It's not about that. And a lot of times on this channel, we do talk about stuff like that, where it's like, how can we be a little bit more efficient? But it's not about getting more stuff done in your day. It's about getting that stuff done that needs to be done in a more succinct way, and then to move on with our lives. And I think we kind of gloss over that second part so much because it's so easy to just say, like, let's get all these tasks in a more efficient manner. And then we just add more tasks to our to-do list to fill up the space that we have, because life implores a vacuum. My old landlord used to tell me all that all the time. He's like, all right, now you got this more space back here, but now it's like, oh, you're just gonna, like, I told him, oh man, I already filled up that space that you just gave me. And he's like, yeah, life implores a vacuum, man. If you got space, you're gonna find a way to fill it, and your schedule is the same way. So if you figure out how to manage your time or manage yourself in a given amount of time, more efficiently, sometimes you're going to say, like, well, now I have like 2 hours, so now I can get more stuff in on that time frame. Or you might just like expand that project out where, if you have, say, like this, I make a YouTube video or a podcast and I say I've got all day to do it. It's going to take me all day to do it because I've given myself all day to do it. But if I give myself like a 2 hour window, I'm going to get it smushed down. I'm going to be very precise, get it done. Anyway, that's not about what's going to make you happier. What's going to make you happier is the rest of the stuff we talk about in today's episode. But first, I gotta do it. I gotta talk about a course. We don't have sponsors, of course, like and this is a free course, so it's not going to do a whole lot, right, for me, but it's going to do a lot for you. And if you are just getting started in photography, or maybe you've been at it for a few years, but you're still kind of in that stage where you haven't got it all kind of harnessed yet, right? You haven't completely got it like under control, and then you're moving on to other things. This course is for you. And it's for a lot of like more advanced people too. There's some stuff in there that's a little bit more advanced because I know that you can handle it. But it's called Getting Started with Rodeo Photography, or Getting Started with Photography. The name kind of implies that it's just going to be some basic tips and tricks, but it's so much more than that. There are podcast episodes in there, there are videos in there, there's mini courses in there. We talk about Lightroom, printing in Lightroom, editing photos in Lightroom, all this good stuff. So I think that if you haven't checked it out, even if you're more advanced, go ahead, go to equinephotoschool.com/courses, and you just join that buzz through there. You can pick and choose whatever. The best thing is about all of these courses, they are lifetime accessible. So once you sign in, once you enroll in any of these courses, you're going to have lifetime access. So there's no rush to get through it or whatever. You go at your own pace. And the best part about having lifetime access is anytime I make an update, you automatically get it. It's like a free gift to everybody that is, subscribed already or enrolled already in that course. So go ahead, enroll in that course. Check out the other courses if you haven't already. And let's get into it. What is it about photography that motivates you, right? So we got to start there. Like, making it fun is like a whole deal. Like, it's a whole big portion of it. So what is it that motivates you? What's your driving factor? Yeah, we're all motivated by money in some sense or another. We got to eat, got to put a roof over our head, like the hierarchy needs, right? The big base, right? Once we get all of those kind of under control, right? Then what? Then what's the deal, right? Maybe you're not even to the point where photography is making money for you yet, and that's okay too. If you're just getting started, you're going to love this episode. It's super mind-opening for a lot of you guys. What we want to do here is think about, why do we want to take pictures in the first place? Why do we want to go through all of the hassle, all of the struggles of and all of the expense, right, of like buying this gear, putting it to use, buying a better tripod, buying a better lens, buying a better camera, whatever it is, right? Why do we want to go through all that and then go through all the hassle of learning, setting it all up, dialing it in, making sure that our settings are right, going through the edit process when we're all done? Why are we doing that in the first place? Why, is it because you are interested in rodeo photography? Is it because like you got hurt and you want to stay in the rodeo game, right? Like maybe you busted your leg and now you can't, compete like you used to be able to, but you still want to be in there. Your friends are still in there. You still want to be in that environment, right? Maybe you're from the big city and rodeos are super cool and you just, you want to dive in and shoot rodeos, or maybe you own horses and you just want to take better pictures of your horses so you can sell them. Whatever it is. Whatever it is that motivates you, right? That's one thing. But another thing is like what makes you happy? Is there something that's like not even in this horse and rodeo niche that you really like to take pictures of? Like I like landscape photography. I think it's really fun and it's kind of like refreshing, or bird photography. Like that's super cool. I've learned so many things shooting pictures of birds and studying how bird photographers work. I mean, if they can track a bird flying through the air with a 400 millimeter lens, this tiny little bird, I can track a barrel racer with a 300 millimeter lens. You know what I mean? So we learn from others, and cross reference, and photography is at the base of it. It's still just photography. It's the same stuff. Lighting, ISO, shutter speed, you name it. All of that stuff just is still photography, and it crosses over, and that sort of thing. And there's some nuanced little things that all the other little niches do to make them unique for their thing, right? Like we don't do a lot of macro photography in horse and rodeo photography, but I do have a macro lens all the time because I'll take pictures of buckles super close or something like awards or whatever. If somebody makes custom saddles, I'll do like the detail work on their saddles and zoom way in and get really close in that that detail work. Maybe if they're, I might shoot a video with my macro lens, getting in there really close while they're, tooling on the leather or whatever it might be. There's all kinds of reasons why you'll want a whole slew of lenses like I got there and over here. And, in my case down here, I got lenses coming out the ears. But all of that said, a lot of those lenses I don't ever use for horse and rodeo photography, like that 24 millimeter lens right there. That's for astrophotography. I bought that because it has a huge aperture to it. It opens up to like f1.4. Great for astrophotography, hard to focus at night using 1.4, but I'll dial it to like f2 and it's way better than f2.8. I can get a little lower ISO and get cleaner pictures, still can get all that depth of field that I need to. Anyway, super fun. It's just like it drives me, like my curiosity can drive me in a lot of ways, and maybe that's for you too. For me, it's like I do splash photography. I'll do all these other like weird photography things just to test it out, just to see like, oh, do I like this? Whatever. I bought a little thing to like drip, and then it tells my camera, and it knows how, I dial in the different settings so I can get that splash just right. It's just like a weird little thing. It cost me like 150 bucks or whatever. It was like nothing, but it was just like a fun thing that I could do for a little while and test out, different skills and different, you light the little tiny objects, and then you think, oh, if I applied that to team roping photography and how to capture the action, in a split second and freeze that action with light instead of using my shutter speed, like, man, you just learn all this stuff and you apply that to what we do as horse and rodeo photographers. So one thing that I like to do and that really has driven me to travel all the time, and why I spent like the last 8 years or so just traveling full time doing rodeo photography basically in all parts of the Western United States, right? And that was the travel part of being a photographer. It led me to get to travel to all these places. Like my shirt right here, this is from Glacier National Park. We've been to Glacier, half a dozen times or so, because we got to go there and shoot a barrel race, the Glacier Chaser Classic. Try saying that 10 times fast. That barrel race up there let me go to Glacier National Park. Now, we didn't make a ton of money at that event, but I was able to pay myself and my help, pay the help first, of course, and then, have that money. And then we were there for several days. The arena was kind enough to let us show up a little bit early and stay a little bit late so that we could go and explore the national park. And it was just a nice thing that they let us do. Didn't really, you know, cost anybody anything. And we got to stay there. And that was part of why I went full time into RV life, is because I got to go to all of these cool places, right? So no matter where I was at in the country, there's usually like a national park or some interesting thing to do. We went to Round Top, Texas. We went to some breweries. We went to do all this stuff, right? So it's whatever it is that drives you. Find something that you like to do. Now, I'd always take my camera with me, right? Like, who goes to Glacier National Park and doesn't take their camera, right? So you go there and you take pictures. You take landscape pictures or wildlife photos or whatever it is, and you're improving your skills as a photographer, but you're just having fun. You're just out there making it enjoyable, making it fun for you, levels up your skills in an easier way rather than like doing drills, right? Nobody gets like really enthusiastic about like doing photo drills, but sometimes like you've seen me do in other videos in the past, like when we're learning aperture, we'll just line up rocks on a table and we'll dial in different apertures to watch that depth of field grow and shrink. And it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, that's how that works and that's what's happening here. And then we go apply it to something fun like landscape photography or portraits or whatever it is, right? So we're either using all of the depth of field at landscape photography, or we're narrowing it way down for portraits and just like selectively focusing on our subject and blurring that background, whatever it is. Like, we can do fun things with the stuff that we learn in those drills, but then it's like, let's go make it fun. Let's go have fun. Let's go do a thing, right? Like, if we do a workshop, we're going to come here, we're going to study these things, we're going to learn how all the different settings work. Then we're going to go out in the desert and take some portraits of these horses and riders, and then we're going to put them all up in a landscape while they're riding up a hill or something, and then we get that landscape kind of shot where everything is in focus, right? So we're just using these tools to help us progress and help us grow, but we're doing that in a fun way, something that interests us inherently, right? It drives you right here. You feel compelled to go and do the thing. What can we do that is like not even related to photography at all, right? Like, for me, it was disc golf. Like, when I was just getting started, one of the very first things I took pictures of was me and my buddies out playing disc golf and practicing freezing that action, trying to understand how shutter speed worked. But pretty soon I was like, all right, this lugging this camera around while we try to play disc golf is like, we need some boundaries here. So, you know, pretty soon after I was like making good money with photography, I quit bringing my camera to disc golf, but I would just go, and that would be a thing that was like separate, right? It was like, all right, we don't have to think about photography, we don't have to worry about it, we don't think about business, we don't do anything. If an idea comes up though, I have my notes app on my phone. I'll bring out my notes app, I'll write it down, so it pulls it out of my head, puts it into my device, or bring a notepad if that's what you prefer. But just get those ideas out and then just be done with them, and then be present in the moment. Be there to like hang out with friends or whatever. I would go play disc golf by myself. I don't care. But whatever it is, like, I'm usually somewhere like away from people that I know often. Like, I'm in some random town in the US. But if you know, if I know somebody, or I might put on Facebook, hey, anybody in, you know, Kalispell, Montana, hey, do you guys want to go play disc golf with me or go to the park or whatever it was? You know, I might say something like that on social media, I might get a hit or two, or I might just go and do it on my own. You know, sometimes you just got to get away from people too, you know what I mean? So that's really just like one of those things. Like, think of something that is not related to photography at all, and make sure you incorporate that into your life. Because if that is not part of you and part of your life, it's gonna like feel like a drag. It's gonna feel like you're working all the time, and that can get like, that can lead to burnout real fast. Ask me how I know, right? I've definitely been burned out. I'm still feel like I'm recovering from being completely just buried in the dirt burnout, right? So I'm still getting, there's definitely been like points where I'm like, oh, all right, I'm feeling real good about this again, and then there's still been some points since I retired from event photography that I'm like, all right, I still feel very burnout, so I will do absolutely nothing. I won't even come into my office here at all. I'll just like stay gone for a couple days. You got to find out whatever that is to you, right? Is that like taking your kids on a hike? Is it like going to your kid's soccer game? If I don't know, I don't have kids, so I don't know what that's like for being a parent, but find out what that is for you, and then make sure that you're incorporating more of that into your life. And we're going to talk about how in just a second. So how are we going to find time? How are we going to make this work in our lives, right? Because right now your schedule is probably jam-packed. You're probably listening to this while you're doing something else. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you're probably like doing something else. You're cooking, or I don't know, who knows what you're doing while you're watching this on YouTube, but thank you for being here and watching. If you're watching or listening, then try doing the other one, you know? We got a lot of good content here on YouTube, and in the podcast we have, this is like episode 45, so we got 44 other episodes. You know, if you want to go and deep dive back into, you might find some gems in there. I'm telling you, there's some good stuff. Maybe I'm biased. But what we want to do is apply Pareto's principle, and I'm just going to read you this. What Pareto's principle is states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. The vital few is what they call it. And he came up with this 80-20 rule, is what a lot of people refer to it as. I learned about this first in the 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss. Basically, what we're doing, 80% of our, say, income, for example, if you want to look at it in the lens of money, right? 80% of our income comes from 20% of our efforts. So if you go back, like I used to do, and you can watch other episodes of this where we talk about this in other podcasts, we kind of applied this 80-20 principle rule a long time ago, and I would just always chop out. What you should do ideally to stick to the rule is to chop off the bottom 80%, and that's gut-wrenching for a lot of you. I know a lot of you heard that and went, oh, I could never chop out 80% of my events. Like, well, if you go to look on a spreadsheet, right, like put them all in a spreadsheet, make a list so it's easy to like resort them, right? You can just start from like January 1st last year to the end of January 31st last year. Look at all of the things that you did, all of like the events. Let's, like, if we're going to talk about event photography, list down all of the events that you shot and how much money you made, and then sort it, because you're on a spreadsheet, you can sort it by most to least. And I think you're going to find that if you look at the net income from all of those, you're going to see that the top 20%, roughly, you know, it varies a little bit, but the top little chunk makes up the majority of your income. If you add up the top 20% and the bottom 80%, I think you're going to see that like the top 20% makes up 80% of your income. And then the bottom 80% only makes up 20% of your income. So essentially, if you chop off, if you eliminate, if next year you don't do that bottom 80% of events, you're going to have 80% of your time back. And you're only going to take a 20% hit on your income, right? So if you made 100 grand last year working every single weekend, well, now you take 80% of those weekends, and now that's your free time, and now you're only making 80 grand a year, which is still quite a good chunk of money, right? Like, I think any of us, it probably feels like originally, you know, like right now you're like, oh man, but I'm using every dime right now. I think if you took a 20% pay cut and you just like did a gut check and you just went and did it, I think you'd realize that pretty soon now you've opened up all this opportunity to focus on the things that really do make you the most amount of income, that have the biggest impact on your income, and you're going to be doing more of that stuff. And so instead of getting a 20% decrease, you're actually going to be getting a huge increase in pay, because now you're going to find where you could add more of those things that were paying really good into your schedule, because you've eliminated all the things that aren't paying very good or maybe costing you money, huh? Some of you guys know that you've spent more to get to an event than you made at that event, and those things have got to go immediately. I don't care what else you do, stop doing those things, okay? Now that you have 80% back into your life though, if you want to do some stuff that's like for charity, for a donation, for whatever, you know, that's cool. That is like, if that makes you happy, do that thing. Right? For me, it was like, I need to go play disc golf. I need to go get away from this. I got to go do landscape photography. I got to go do other things with my time, right? And so I got to where I was working less than 6 months worth of weekends out of the year, right? I was working less than every other weekend. So one of those things is like great for me, because like now I feel like I'm living the semi-retired life. I can go explore all these places. I'm still making a lot of money. You know, at the time I retired, I was doing 320 grand a year, right? Like I was working basically part-time, and that was great for like what I was doing, and I was applying this principle, right? So every year I was chopping off a huge chunk of my events and then having this free time built into my schedule where I could go and explore and do the things that I want to do. And then I was adding in more of those really high value things into my schedule. And then eventually you fill up the schedule and then you got to make a big chop again. And so pretty soon that bar just keeps going up and up and up and up and up as you grow. And that's how you grow your business. That's how you get better and bigger clients. That's how everything is like, moving up and moving forward, because you have to get rid of some things so you have room to add more things in, more high value ticket things. Now you might be thinking to yourself like, oh man, I don't just care about money, and that's cool. If that's you, then awesome. I know a photographer that I like read about, don't know them personally, but I read this article about this photographer that was kind of doing the same thing, right? She had a really good business going on, and she was making enough income, she felt comfortable, and she would wipe out her schedule with a huge chunk, like 40, 60% of her time, 80% of her time was like free time. Basically, it was like she was, doing these high ticket, high value clients and shooting their pictures, and then the rest of the time, because she's a highly skilled photographer and she loves photography, but she also loves dogs, and she had a soft spot for the dogs that needed adopted, but they, like her local pound didn't have a skilled photographer, and they couldn't pay for photography, and they dang sure couldn't afford her because her rates are super high, because she is a highly skilled, highly valuable photographer shooting high value clients. But she felt good, financially. She had all this free time by applying principles like this one. So she decided to go to the pound every month or whatever it was that fit into her schedule. Now that she has all this free time, she was donating a lot of her time and her skills and her equipment, her expertise, her editing, all of the stuff, so that she could take pictures of these dogs and help find them a home. So if that's a good deed that resonates with you, what can you do? Do you want to volunteer at a soup kitchen? Do you want to travel to other countries? Whatever it might be that suits you, whatever it is that tickles your fancy, it really drives you, it makes you happy and motivated, and that's what you want to do. Well, you got to have time to do those things. So let's chop out some of the stuff that's not serving you and insert some things that are serving you. You might feel like by saying yes to all of these opportunities that you're like being a good person, and that makes you feel good because you said yes, because this little organization wants you to shoot their barrel race, and that little organization wants you to shoot their tiny little team roping, and you're saying yes because like at the beginning of your career, that's what got you here. What got you here isn't necessarily going to get you there. So once you've filled your schedule, now it's time to be more selective about what gets put on your schedule. And saying yes to everything at the beginning is a great strategy to build your business, to get going, to get recognized, and most importantly, to get practice at the skill. But once you've kind of filled that up, you have to look at it more systematically and just make sure that like you are taking care of yourself, because if you don't put on your mask, right, you can't help others. So plain reference. Like sometimes it's hard to see this and it's hard to conceptualize that, but once you're saying yes to something and you say, I'm going to be there at your event, now you've committed that time to going to that event, setting up, shooting it, tearing it down, and then coming back. So all of that time is now locked in on that project. So what you're doing is you're saying no to everything else that you could have done during that time. And if that project, if that event, if that whatever isn't serving you, isn't helping you move forward, do what you want, you're not enjoying it, you're not making enough money, whatever that might be to you, then you should just eliminate it. You should have said no to it in the first place. Now that you've said yes to it, you got to do it. But in the future, get in the habit of having no as your default so that you can be open to these bigger opportunities. It's either like a yes that you're like, oh, I am so pumped to do this thing, that is a dang sure that's a yes, or it's a no. Like if you're just like, oh yeah, that might be okay, like, oh, okay, I guess I should do that or whatever, or like, yeah, maybe this will be an okay opportunity. If you're just kind of ho-hum about it, just say no. That's just a no. You got to be like, yes, like an enthusiastic, yes, we're doing it, or it's a no. Because there's just no room in your schedule, in your life, and whatever for some humdrum stuff. You got to just take the stuff that is just like really lighting a fire up under you, and you're gonna do so much better at those things. You're gonna bring in your whole being, your whole everything to those things you're really fired up about, and then the stuff that you're not fired up about, it should just kind of go away and be replaced with fun things that you like to do, right? Enjoy your time, enjoy this life that you have. If that's with your family and your kids, or if you're solo, just go out and just make the best of it. Whatever it is that really like makes you feel good, makes you light up a fire underneath of you. Thank you for listening to episode 45 of the Equine Photo School podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. If you made it this far, I appreciate you, and happy listening. Let's see you in the next one.